Hey Trey, how are you doing?
Hey Reed, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Glad to be
So
here.
we are in our fourth installment of Harding School of Theology's student highlight. So we thought we'd talk with you, kind of hear a bit about you, and I'm going to pick your brain for wisdom and insight along the way. I'm looking forward to hearing more about you. We are currently in sermon development and delivery together with Bland. How have you been enjoying that class?
It's been good. So I have been preaching for, I guess, 7 years now, and there's just some things that I never even thought of, like at least not put conscious thought into. So, like, what is the shape of my sermon, and where is it going, or what is the form?
Yeah.
And those are things like I've messed around with changing up forms and sermons and things like that, but I didn't quite have the categories for it. And so one of the things that this class has done is give me some of those categories and help me to see how I can employ various techniques and things more effectively. And so I've really enjoyed it. It's helped me out a lot, I think. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. We kind of skipped the basics. So I love to hear kind of where you're living. Tell me about your family and what's your current ministry position.
Okay, so we are in Guntown, Mississippi, which is you probably don't know where that's at. It's like a town of 2,000 people. We are working in Tupelo, Mississippi, and maybe that rings a bell for some of you. Birthplace of Elvis. That's kind of what it's known for, anyway. But so we're in Guntown. That's where we live right now, and where we will be living for like the next 48 hours. And we're going to be moving on Saturday, less than 48 hours, I guess. So we'll be moving just to another town, a little bit closer to the church here, and really excited about that. But we're working with the Northeast Church of Christ here in Tupelo. We've been here for about 4 years, and originally from Texas. So I am a Texan at heart, born and raised, and never thought I'd leave Texas. But we kind of heard through the grapevine of this congregation, and we were told, this is a really close-knit family. They're on fire. They love each other, and they're just excited to get about the work. And so we came up here and visited, and they just took us in open arms. I mean, my wife and I, we left both of our families back in Texas and Houston and in Dallas. And so it was kind of a difficult transition, but they've really made it so much easier than it would have been otherwise, because
Wow.
they've taken us in. So
Wow.
but we love being here with this group here in Tupelo.
That's great. Do you have any kids, or is it just you and your wife?
No, yeah, we do. We've got three kids now. So our daughter Emerson, she is 4. She is really 4, going on like 14 or 24. I'm not quite sure what it is all the time. She is so grown up, or at least she feels that way sometimes. And it's always an adventure with her. She's kind of the one we got to keep our eye on.
Mhm.
And then our son, our middle child, Rhett, he is, wow, he's going on 2 years now.
Wow.
So he's fun. He's just a funny dude. He's always making these faces, and you can tell things are going on in his head, but he's
Yep, he's
still not
thinking.
quite talking well, and so you can't decipher it, but something's happening there. And then we've got a 4-month-old son, Lincoln, and he's just the happiest baby. Our other two, we had some colic and issues with that, but this guy, I mean, he's just always smiling. So a lot of diversity there with our 3 kids, but they bring us joy and adventure constantly.
That's really fun to hear. So I'm sure I caught you, not at a stressful time at all. Moving, 3 kids, no big deal.
Yeah, no,
I
nothing going
appreciate
on. Actually, today's actually a pretty good day for us to be having this conversation. So I'm
it.
glad we could do this.
Awesome. So I love asking this question and kind of hearing how people get to HST. So what has your journey been to taking classes at the Harding School of Theology?
So I feel like I sort of fell into it, slipped into it. Call it coincidence, call it providence. I'd probably point toward the latter. But we moved up here, like I said, a little over 4 years ago. Start working with the church here, and we were here, I guess, about 6 months before I didn't even know HST existed. I didn't know At least I didn't know they existed and were in Memphis, so close to where we
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
And I was up in Memphis for a preaching conference, and um, I was talking with another guy there, another preacher, and he was telling me about how he goes to school at HST and how he loves it. This is Robert Ogden. He was a student just a couple years ago. And so that's when I first heard about it. And he started telling me, you can take classes online. They do have a residency requirement, but then the rest of your coursework you can take online. And that was just really attractive to me. We were about an hour and 45 minutes outside of Memphis. So that wouldn't have been like a terrible commute. I did that my first semester. So on Tuesdays, I'd go up for ATR and for Greek, and it was a long Tuesday. Leave at 6 a.m, get home about 6 p.m, with a couple classes in the middle. But it was just a really great opportunity. I didn't even think anything like that existed. You could get your residency requirement out of the way, and then the rest of this I've just done through HST Live, which is amazing. And I guess that's mostly what people are doing now these days. It was Zoom and everything, but we were already doing that. So
yeah, that's so true. I live like less than a mile away, and it's all online. That's right. Where did you go to school for undergrad?
So for undergrad, I went to a small Bible college in Tampa, Florida. Really, Temple Terrace, Florida is where it's at, but it's just outside of Tampa. It's called Florida College. Really original name there. But it was a group of about, at least when I was there, I think we had like 560 students, something like that. So it was actually smaller than my graduating class in high school. So it was a really close, intimate sort of community. That's where I went to school. That's where I did undergrad. And there's actually, let's see, I guess there was about 3.5 to 4 years between when I finished undergrad and when I came back to HST.
Okay.
So I did take some time off, and that's part of sort of the slipping into, providentially being led into this was that wasn't quite on my life plan originally, but I'm so glad I'm here now.
That's awesome. So can you guess about how many hours you're in? I don't think I could tell you how many I'm in, but roughly where are you in the program that you're doing?
I'm over halfway at this point. I'm taking MA in New Testament, which I think the full degree plan is like 48 hours, but I did come in with some advanced standing. So I think it was like 42. I may be at 27, 30, something like that. So I'm over halfway at this point. But I've also picked up a second degree, started pursuing MA in Old Testament as well. And so that's pushing the timeline back a little bit.
Just a little bit, I'm sure, yeah.
Just a little bit, but I'm glad to be doing it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you have a favorite class that you've taken or one that kind of stands out to you?
So it's going to come down to either Isaiah with Dr. Hawley, which I took back, I guess, a couple of years ago in the fall, or a class I did with Dr. Oster in the Book of Revelation, which was just phenomenal. So I don't know if I could choose right now between those two, but both of those stand out as highlights for me.
Gotcha. Great. That's good to know. I've not taken either of those, so I'll have to keep that in mind. Okay, so our last kind of normal question. I don't know if you've watched any of the other videos, but we do a speed round at the end, which is pretty fun. So what is keeping you spiritually and emotionally healthy right now with COVID and doing ministry and taking courses? What is it that you found has been kind of keeping you going or helping you keep God's presence kind of in the midst of your life?
So especially related to COVID, one thing that happened for me, and I'm sure this is true of a lot of people in ministry. I know when COVID first started, people were out of jobs, or at least not working in their normal schedules. A lot of people were at home spending time with their families and probably had more time than what they were used to. I think for ministers, it probably was the reverse was probably true. We probably got more busy, I think, a lot of us, and that certainly was true for me. And so when all of this first started, I really did feel a need to try to have something that would continually ground myself and keep that connection there. And so one thing that happened was there's a small group of us here, me and a few women that every day we post about our Bible reading, and we just kind of interact about that on a forum that we've got. And we call that our daily manna. It's the thing that we need each day. And those just sort of small interactions and sharing our insights and what we've learned and what we can grow in, and how God is speaking to us that day. That has been really big for me. And so we started that pretty early on with all this COVID stuff, and we've continued that. And that's been huge for me, on top of just normal Bible study. I will say one other thing beyond that is I've got a friend that it doesn't happen every day, but we try to make it happen every day that we can. We will call and we'll talk for 15, 20 minutes. We'll pray together, and just having that connection, especially because we're not getting face-to-face interaction with people all the time. We're not having these conversations, and the life of a minister is already pretty isolated, can be pretty lonely at times. And so him and I are both in that boat. And so we've been talking to each other each day, praying each day, trying to encourage each other. And so that's been really, really beneficial for me, just having another person to sort of go through life with in that way.
Yeah, I think that's such a good answer. And that's kind of a theme I've been finding I ask the same question every time. And it's about people, and it's about connections and relationships. And I think that's so important. And I love that you're doing that with some women in your congregation, that you get to kind of, mutually encourage one another. That's such a great idea. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay,
really
so
helpful.
speed round. I'm going to ask these, and just kind of the first answer that comes to mind. Don't worry, these aren't tricky by any means.
Okay.
So first one, if you could eat dinner with someone from the Bible besides Jesus, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a great question. I'd probably have to say Joseph.
Okay.
So Joseph's one of those guys where he's got a lot going on in his life, and he's not really always able to see how the chess pieces are being moved all around him, and how he himself is fitting into this larger story. And he's a complex character, maybe one that we don't often. He tends to be a flat character, I think, for a lot of us. But I think as he had all the experiences that he did, and being moved around in these different places, and I just think there's a lot that you could learn from a guy like that, who's been there, who's done that, especially in a year like this, right, where we don't know what's going on, we don't know what the future holds, and it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of trust, and I feel like Joseph's got a lot of that. So I'd probably say Joseph.
Great. That's an awesome answer. I love it. I think we've gotten a different person from the Bible every time so far, which I think is cool. Okay, next one. What has been a favorite book that you have read this year, either in HST or out of HST?
Okay. I would probably have to say it comes down to two books, and this kind of gets back to an earlier question. As all of this was happening, I read a book, and maybe you've read it. I know it's pretty popular these days, but Atomic Habits. I read that, and that was just really helpful. I knew I needed to just, again, try to stay grounded, and try to make sure that with all of the busyness and schedules being thrown off, that I was really having something to keep me grounded and keep me disciplined. So that was a really helpful book, really practical book. One that I guess maybe not quite as practical, and I'd heard about it a lot, hadn't read it yet, but I finally decided to read through it, and that's Surprised by Hope by N.T. Wright.
Yeah.
That was just a hugely helpful book for me, and I really appreciated reading through that.
That one's on my to-read list. It's kind of farther down on it, so I don't know when I'll get to it, but those are great. Okay, so describe the year 2020 in one word.
Oh, wow. Do-over? That's two words, but could we? Let's see. I guess just waiting.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Favorite movie of all time?
Oh, man, that's hard. So for me, it's going to come down to a couple, and the first one I'm getting from my dad, and that's Gladiator. It's just a wonderful movie. Really, really great movie. Russell Crowe does an amazing job in that. And then, so that'd be the first one. And then the second one, oh man, you shouldn't have asked me this question because now I'm forgetting the title of it. It's Hugh Jackman. It's a movie where magicians.
Oh, The Prestige? Was
Yeah, The
that?
Prestige. The
Okay, yeah.
Prestige.
Mhm.
I love that movie. I
Okay.
love that movie.
It's a great movie.
So
Great movie. Okay, and last question. What is it that you love about the city you live in or the place that you live?
Okay. So we're in Guntown. It's a pretty small town. Every street in my neighborhood is named after a gun. So I live on Benelli Drive. So that's interesting. But I guess I'd probably go with Tupelo because that's really where we're living and working larger. It's at least from my my experience, I grew up in Houston and in Dallas, so really big cities. Tupelo is much smaller, it's much calmer, it's much more quiet. And so I really do like that smaller city feel. But even then, Tupelo is like the largest city in Northeast Mississippi. So it kind of serves as a hub for all these smaller towns around. And so it's not like we don't have anything here that we would want, that we would need. But you still do get that small town feel where you know people and people know you. And you just don't feel so disconnected.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to know. Living in Memphis, real close by. I'll have to come visit sometime. Well, Trey, thank you so much for joining us for another edition of this. It has been so great and interesting to get to know you a bit more and hear about your ministry. We'll be praying for your church and your local work that you're doing. We really love that.
Thank you, Reed. I really appreciate having this opportunity to chat with you, and it's been good.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. I'll see you in class next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. See
All
ya.
right, man. Bye.